Hi, ELA team. I just want to give you a little bit of information today, a quick walkthrough of our Q3 book club LibGuide, a little talk about how to make reading plans with students, and also just a few quick tips for getting started in book clubs. So this is what our Q3 LibGuides look like for book clubs. You'll notice that there are tabs for social issues, historical fiction, and fantasy dystopia. Each book club has 2 tabs. One says multi-use. The books on this tab are available for unlimited copies across schools, so any student can check these out and they'll always be available. The next tab for each book club says 5 to 20 copies. These are district-wide copies, so these will be available until they're all checked out. It's important to remind students that when they want a book on Mac and VIA that they do use the checkout feature so that the next time they come back, the book is still available for them. You'll notice that there are 3 columns of books. The middle column are our books right around grade level. So in our social issues book clubs, the middle column books are about a 5th to 6th grade level. Then we have in the left column books that are 2 to 3 grade levels below, and in the right column books that are above. Now, a lot of you may do genre-based book clubs where students are picking their own books. So there is a tab called Finding Independent eBooks. In this tab, students will find videos that show them how to search for books in both Libby and Mac and VIA, as well as videos on how to log into those apps if they need to. You'll notice in the left-hand column there are search terms that students can use that will find them books for these different book clubs. Next, I want to talk a little bit about making reading plans with students. Making a solid reading plan at the beginning of a book club unit is a great way to set students off for success. So there are some things to think about when making a reading plan with students. And I always start by really thinking about what are my goals for the reading plan. Beyond just getting the students to the end of the books, what is the bigger skill that I'm teaching them by talking about setting goals and working through a book? Then as you design your reading plan, think about how many class meetings students have to complete the book, if you want them to set a daily goal or a weekly goal. A lot of our students will be reading digitally, so do their books have page numbers? Or are we thinking about reading plans in terms of percentages or chapters? Thinking about that too, especially with percentages. How are you going to guide a student to read to the end of a chapter instead of stopping when they hit the percent they need to hit for that day? Are there scheduled discussions that you have? Are your groups discussing once a week, twice a week? And are you using those as guideposts for your reading plans? And then thinking about just pacing, I normally suggest students include a couple catch-up days so they have time if they get behind. And then think about what are you going to do for those students that finish their book clubs books early. A couple things to remember as you are working on your reading plans. As with everything else, you really need to model your reading plan. I always choose a book that is outside of the unit that I'm teaching so that students will do the work with their own book instead of copying the one that I model with. And model making the whole reading plan. They do involve a little bit of math to figure out how to get to the end of the book on time. So make sure that you give students a simple equation to follow and walk them through how to do that. And finally, remember that reading plans are living documents. So think about how you're going to check in with students throughout the quarter. Are you going to have individual conferences? Are you going to do check-ins in your synchronous classes? And then how are you going to check in asynchronously too? Are you going to use a Google form? I've embedded mine on Schoology before, and it's very quick for students to just click whether or not they're on track. Or are you going to have them check in using Schoology discussions? I'll show you a couple examples of reading plans that I've used. This is the reading plan that I used with my book club class this fall. So this I used in a virtual class setting. I always start by having students check in with how many pages or chapters does their book have. Think about how many class periods they have to complete it. And then they need to do that simple math. If I have a certain number of pages and 18 class periods, that's going to give me how many pages or how many chapters per class period. Remember to make sure they know what to do if their book doesn't have pages. They're probably going to need to use percents. And then have them map it out so that they know for every class. My class met twice a week, so I had them write the first day of the week and the second day of the week. What is their page goal? Where do they need to be that class so that they can stay on track? A couple other ways to think about reading plans. This one is similar at the top, but is broken down by discussions. So in this case, we were having a group discussion once a week. So they set a page goal for where they want to be by that group discussion. This is a great way to set up a reading plan for a more independent reader. Our readers that tend to be a little more driven and able to guide themselves to where they need to be might use a reading plan like this. And this is an example of a reading plan that's broke down even further of I need to know every single day what my page goal is to help me stay on track. You could divide it like this. You don't have to use the same reading plan with every student. Think about reading plans as another opportunity for differentiation. We've got some students that need something really structured and some students that do well with something that's a lot broader. So think about how you can choose the right reading plan for your students or give them choice in what kind of structure they need. Finally, I just want to share 3 takeaways that I found while teaching book clubs virtually this year. The first is to offer choice. So ways that students can participate synchronously as well as asynchronously. And within that, if a student is synchronous, but they don't want to turn on their microphone, how are the ways that they can participate in the chat? As well as if they're asynchronous, but they would rather speak rather than type, what are the ways that you can offer for them to participate that way? Within that, I think it's really important to keep it simple. Choose maybe 2 ways that you're going to have discussions. Maybe it's a Schoology discussion and a Flipgrid. That way you're focusing more on the skills and the thinking work of reading rather than teaching them new technology skills. And finally, think of every class as a fresh start. We know that students don't always consistently show up during distance learning. So how can you make every class feel like a fresh start so that students don't feel behind when they do show up? I found a great way to do this was to pick really short anchor texts that I could introduce at the beginning of each class session so that students that didn't do the work previous were still able to engage in the thinking work that day. If you have any questions about my experience with book clubs or anything that I shared with reading plans today, feel free to send me an email. Or if you have questions about the LibGuide, you can always reach out to your building librarians. I'd love to email with you about your questions or even set up a time to meet if I can be helpful in that way. Thanks everyone and have a wonderful day.